Good morning. I'm
Good
Brady.
morning. I'm Brady.
And I'm Daniel.
And I'm Zach.
Daniel.
And I'm
Water
Zach.
on
And
the
this is
Dipstick.
Water on the
Really great
Dipstick.
show. Okay, guys. So what we do at this point is we pause so that Daniel can cut this out for editing, and then he's going to add the little car revving thing.
Should I not just stop it then?
If you've made it this far, you've had the misfortune of hearing one of our many intros. As we try to pan these out, please let us know your thoughts and leave a comment. Tell us how much you hate our voices, or how terrible our monologues are. Oddly enough, for Water on the Dipstick, we have two great guests, and we're excited to share them with you. And here they are.
And I sell car insurance. Would you like to buy some car insurance?
That's rough, because I sell car insurance.
I sell car insurance. Are you kidding? Oh, brother! Like we are of the same. There's no shame in it.
Of the same
Journalism is collapsing, and I sell car insurance, and there's no shame in that. Now, we are not on tape, but we're probably on tape, aren't we? Fuck. Anyway, you wanted intros. Okay. My name is Sam Smith. I am 41 years old. I have a bald spot. I grew up around cars in a restoration shop. I've been working in car magazines since probably 2006 full-time. Freelance on and off for about 4 or 5 years before that. Did a bunch of time at pretty much every magazine you can think of except Motor Trend, Car and Driver, Automobile. Spent about 8 years at Road and Track. Did a TV show for NBC Sports. Did another TV show for NBC Sports. And now, as we were talking earlier, I sell insurance for Haggerty. I think the company probably has a full name, but I don't know what it is. I write, I'm a journalist and YouTube guy and broadcaster for Haggerty, for the media division of Haggerty. And this is my friend Michael.
Hey, I'm Michael Chaffee. I am a technology consultant who used to be into cars, who happens to be visiting Sam and his family this weekend.
Used to be into
Nice.
cars?
Oh, we'll get into that. There's stories.
Okay, good.
Yeah, let's say we know we relate. We definitely relate.
Sam and I have been doing car and motorcycle
Thanks, man.
stuff. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
Sorry,
right on.
sorry.
I spotted Terlingua, and I got very excited. He's wearing
It's like a deep track reference.
Yeah, we're car nuts. You're going to notice things throughout
Yeah.
the day and be like, oh,
It's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
It's all good.
And anybody wearing the Chili Mustang Shelby Texas thing
Well,
is all
they
right
sell
to me.
these at the ranch, too. If you've ever been out to the spot where he used to hang out.
No.
And we're
This
actually
guy
cutting
right
Mike
here,
off,
Mustang
my
man.
but,
Mustang man.
I said, we're cutting you off, man, so I'm sorry. Get back into it. Yeah.
No, I mean, I was just about done telling the story. The only thing left to say is, like, Sam and I have been doing weird stuff with cars and motorcycles for going on 20 years now.
Chair creaks, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah, I rope chaff into a handful of stories because, like I said, we usually need... the great thing about journalism is that even 30 years ago when everybody had budget, there is never any money. You don't get paid any money. You don't have any money to do stuff. So, like, I think the last one was Alaska, right?
Yes.
We went to the Arctic Circle in a Jeep Wrangler press car with no doors in the middle of summer, and it started off kind of warm in Fairbanks, but it got to be 25 degrees on the tundra up near the ocean.
I want to be sure everybody understands that we made the intentional decision to remove the doors before we start talking about how cold it was.
But we
At the
understandable.
dealership, too, right?
Yeah. So
And
we-
they were fine with that?
So it was really interesting because I walked into the dealer and the guy, knocked the mic. I walked in the dealer and the guy was like, now, why you want to come back for these? And I was like, yeah, please. And then he fed me some coffee that was like some of the best, worst coffee I've ever had, and started talking to me about how, like, when you get out in the middle of nowhere, there will be giant hills, and then you'll be standing there looking at the hills, and then you'll see like a herd of caribou or whatever coming over the hills, and that's when you go the other direction because they don't just run for nothing. There's usually a bear behind it. And then he gave me the whole spiel about how, like, if there is a bear coming at you, you go the other way. And I was like, well, that seems kind of obvious. And he was like, well, not to everybody.
Yeah. he made a real I've got stories face at that point in the narrative.
And then we left the doors and drove 400 miles north to the Arctic Ocean.
It
real
was
dumb.
so cold.
It was
so
stupid
cold.
The thing about a Wrangler, though, coming from a Wrangler guy,
Yeah.
I had a TJ. And,
Previous Wrangler guy.
Previous Wrangler.
He has moved on.
Oh, but here in his stripes, he got rained on. He wouldn't put the top on.
He's been domesticated at this
starting
point.
in March until about late October. No top, no doors. I mean, I
Yeah.
was
Rock-
in
rock
college.
on.
It didn't
Yeah,
matter.
totally.
So,
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, my mother's a rule follower by nature, and she really didn't appreciate the idea when I first got it of me taking the doors off. I was living at home, And I took her out and showed her, because on TJ's, when you flip down the visor, it had a disclaimer that doors were not structural and were not even rated to keep you in the car.
Right.
Did that make her feel better?
Did you show her crash ratings afterwards? That's the selling
They're
point.
negative.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing about doing that is, I mean, obviously the cold is one thing, but as far as a polar bear, as strong as they are, doors on, doors off makes no difference in a Jeep.
Oh, yeah,
They're
totally.
going to get in if they want to.
There was this great moment. So the further north you get, the tree line drops, right? Like the point where the trees can't grow any higher. And eventually you just get past the point where trees stop growing. And once you get past that point, you see these weird things like, mountains that are massively tall but don't have a lick of green on them. It's just rock. And they start, there is no green from, your feet all the way up to, 1,000 feet. Wow. But once you get past that, you're on tundra, which is all just kind of weird, spongy, growthy thing where the water table's super high.
It's weirder than you expect.
Oh, it's super weird. And that goes on for once you get up into it, from the top of Alaska to where, the mountains are to the ocean is probably another 100 miles.
Yeah.
And you're just cruising, and you can't. It's like driving across Kansas. You can't see anything. When we went up there, where there was fog over everything, and the tundra's super fragile. So if you put any weight on it, your foot sinks up to your ankle, and you're not supposed to step on it because it's ecologically protected.
What about the mosquitoes? Because you even made a big bit about that, and I want to hear you and Michael on that.
Oh man!
They were...
Oh man! Go, not me.
All I remember is we went through a lot of bug spray.
That had DEET in it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because the guy at the Jeep
the
dealer
guy.
was real specific. He was like, "Do not get this. Do not get this. Do not. This is for little girls. Buy this.
Get the bug spray with the warning label on it.
Right.
This is advice.
The one that basically downs 747s when you spray it in the sky." But so the point is, we got up there. You mentioned bears, right? We got up there and got onto the tundra, and we're just cruising along, and we're going for 100 miles at maybe 70 miles an hour on this gravel road. And I look
so
over.
cold.
It was so cold. There was a moment where, at that point, because that's also. Sorry, I told you I can't shut up. It's also because the sun doesn't set. It'll be midnight, and it'll be still 4 in the afternoon light. What?
Yeah. Oh God. No, you just reminded me of the part where the golden hour went on for 4 hours.
Yeah. So the time of day, when the sun's about to set and everything looks great, up there because it's so far north that down here Tennessee, even in Seattle, that's maybe really far north. That's maybe 40 minutes. You get a perfect light. Photographers love it because all they have to do is point a camera at something. It turns out amazing. Up there, it's 6 or 7 hours. Because you're on the peak of the planet and everything's it's all golden hour. So our photographer, he
couldn't stop.
He's this short chain smoky guy out of Brooklyn who is real grumpy, and I've never seen him that ungrumpy. But he was just I gotta take a picture. Picture.
He was trying so hard not to look giddy. It was really cute. But also too, then we're going, Dave, it's 11:30 at night. Can we get some dinner? And he's like, no, the light's perfect.
It's been perfect.
It's been perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's been perfect for hours. So we get up there and everybody's all, we didn't know what time it was. Everybody's all super tired. We're driving along. At one point we listened to Carly Rae Jepsen for 20 minutes with the doors off, and it's I have not been that cold in forever.
This man saying "Call me maybe" out the door of a Jeep at a grizzly bear. Just for the record,
we're cruising along, and I'm driving, and I look over, and the tundra's just covered in fog on each side. You have maybe 50 yards of visibility.
100 maybe.
Yeah, and out of the fog just comes this galumphing, leaping, woomph, just brown shape, and it gets closer and closer, and it starts running alongside the Jeep, and we slow down. We're doing 20.
Was it running? No.
Yes, it was.
Wait, really?
Yes, I slowed down because I wanted to pace it and see how fast it was going.
Oh, but it wasn't alongside the Jeep.
No, it
was
was
a safe distance.
It was 75 yards away.
Okay, I just want to make sure nobody thinks that it was
But
in the next lane.
It was in my lap.
We weren't drag racing this thing.
but we see the bear, and we were also out of it. I yelled at it. And Dave got mad at me for yelling at it, but you didn't get mad at me for yelling at it.
I was far too cold. Okay, so
bring him over.
Understand this is 2 days north, 2 days south. A Jeep with no doors is colder than a motorcycle, which I did not expect. Also, we didn't rotate who was sitting in back with no heater vents and no
Oh,
heated
man.
seats,
Nice.
which I also, I was kind of like, we'll get a rotation going. This is going to be great. And then
There's this moment where everybody stopped and put on you put on literally all of your clothes, and it wasn't enough.
Yeah, no, I looked like the kid in Christmas Story.
Because it was like, I mean, it was in the 20s, and then there was 60 or 70 miles an hour wind chill coming in the
it's
truck because it
bonkers.
was doing 70 miles an hour.
And there's nothing to break the wind. It just comes blasting in from the sides, you know?
And it's worse in the back of the Jeep.
Oh,
than
yeah,
in
it
front of
is.
the Jeep.
How do you know?
Because I sat there for like 12 minutes and then weaned out and went back up front.
12 whole minutes. Still counts.
Can confirm, yeah.
Yeah.
No, when we got to Dead Horse at the northern, so like the northern end of that road is just a whole big oil operation, right? And literally the first thing we did is we stopped at the general store in Dead Horse, and I literally picked up an entire like Carhartt, like you wear this if you're a roughneck in the Arctic, like suit, right? I was still cold.
So there's some background on this. So the road we were on is what the name of the highway?
The Dalton?
The Dalton Highway. It is it's like one of the roads they film ice road truckers on.
Oh,
and
yeah,
like
yeah,
it is
yeah.
super. I talked to some people who've been up there before we planned it. Like planning it took a couple months, and it is super super dangerous in spring, fall, and winter. And in summer, you're just going to be really really cold. But
That's when you all went too.
yeah,
right?
we went in summer, but it goes basically from Fairbanks, and it is little bits of pavement for maybe like 50 miles, and then it turns into rutted, nasty gravel that's been sprayed with, what do they say? It was like chloride and...
The thing that was crazy, it was something like, it was basically just like chip seal,
but it was sprayed over gravel, and it
it was
came up,
wild.
but it turned into a paste. It got in our jackets.
Yeah, no, it was bonkers. I still find.
So the DEET felt
that
good
residue.
after that. You're like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. Yeah.
I keep it in my pocket. Then it was a little warm. Yeah, no. Do you remember the craziest thing is it's like you drive out of Fairbanks and you're on like a perfectly good like paved road for like 50 or 70 miles, and then suddenly you get to this point 50 or 70 miles out of Fairbanks, nothing around, absolutely nothing around. But there's like 18 signs being like, proceed at your own risk, pavement ends, peril ahead, and you would think this would be like at the outskirts of a town, but like, the only difference between looking up the road and looking down the road is one side's gravel and the other side is pavement. And for some reason, that's where they made the change with the whole like production.
And it goes on for, I mean, there's a town at like 200 miles in that's basically just a bunch of trailers that was used by the construction crew that built the road 60 years before.
A bunch of trailers and a cardboard hotel.
There was a cardboard hotel. It was crazy too, because like there are little things that you notice. Like we stopped there the first day because you do about 200 miles a day for sanity, basically. We stopped there the first day and we stayed in the cardboard hotel, which was made of cardboard. And I looked outside the window of my room, which was not much bigger than this table, and they had internet there. They had Wi-Fi. But it was
wild.
it was like $20 and super slow, but it was satellite, and there was a satellite because you were so far north. There was a satellite on the roof that was pointed horizontally.
Yeah, it was like
Because it was down to the geostationary stuff that's down on the rest of the continent further south. So you see it literally doing this, pointed at the equator, because the equator was basically to the right.
That's amazing.
Super weird. But
Was there a motorcyclist on this trip as well?
yeah,
Because you even made the motorcycle comparison. It was warmer on the motorcycle than in the Jeep.
Because you're straddling the motor? Is that the difference?
Well, I think it's because like on a bike, like you've got a motorcycle in front of you that kind of breaks the wind, and you're in a little bit of a bubble, even if you don't have like a big fairing or whatever.
Yeah.
Back of the Jeep, you're just getting funnel hit.
Yeah,
now.
exactly. It just blows through like this. Nobody saw. Everything's fine.
We're all good.
It's amateur hour for
Sorry.
us. You see what we're working
I
with.
can't.
always
Oh, dude,
amateur
don't worry
hour
about it.
for us.
I
Don't worry
can't.
about it.
I can't. You want to talk about amateur hour? I'm sitting here doing this in your poor chair, just making everybody listen to me move back and forth.
It's
But
great folding.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's fine. People will listen to it just for.
It makes it authentic.
That's great.
But yeah, it's.
Sit on down now.
I don't know. Stop. I'm sorry for you. But yeah, it was just this weird long experience. And it's 400 miles of road, and there's nothing. Like there's a gas station at maybe every 70 or 80 miles. And when you are in the middle of nothing, you sit there and you look around, and there's just this deep realization that there are still parts of the planet that we have not put anything on.
Yeah.
Did you stop at every one for like redundancy's sake? So
Yeah.
even if you've only gone 70, like I'm filling it all the way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a jerry can or 3. I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
We had
okay.
to use them
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
so it had to have been more than 70 or 80 between
I
stations.
don't know if we would have needed to use them if we hadn't stopped for photos. Like
How
there was
did-
so much strewn around for photos.
How do diesel trucks make that kind of haul though? Like I get that they have a lot more capacity, but do
They must just be able to do it because there's only two. There's only one. I think there's because after the river, there was that one stop after the river that had the weird food.
Okay, the stop
Had
after
the
the river
weird
with the weird food had
Yeah.
gas, right?
Yeah.
It was just that. It was.
Well,
it was
with weird food, you'll have that.
Ladies and gentlemen.
But that was it. That was like basically Fairbanks, the
Yeah.
cardboard hotel town,
Yeah.
the weird diner by the weird bridge town, and then Dead Horse, where, for the record, in 2018, gas was $7.50 a gallon, if I remember right.
Oh my.
So it's you get
Literally
up there,
right next to the oil wells too. Like, come on,
Yeah.
it's right there.
and that's the whole thing, right? So
It's because you have to ship it down and then back up, right?
Oh,
You have to
yeah,
ship
yeah,
it down
that's
and
right.
because it's
ship
not
it-
refined.
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So the trucks are just there solely to get stuff to and from the refinery, and or not the refinery, the oil wells. The oil wells are all at the end of the road because that's where the fields are, and because they're on the tundra, they're all like lifted up on stilts and in these weird kind of Mars-looking buildings. So the wells themselves are
That's
jacketed.
wild.
They're indoor oil wells because it gets too cold. So you see these giant buildings that look like an oil well except dumber, and then you stare at them for a second, you realize the well is inside it. But all the stuff that they brought in for everybody to live in, because like guys go up there and do like 3 or 5 month stints working the wells.
Good night.
Everybody stays in these. I mean, it looks like science fiction moon camp. I mean, it's so weird.
Well, that was the craziest thing when we were there, right? Is like both Dave and Zach, the motorcycle guy,
Okay.
each of them independently remarked that this is probably what the first moon base is going to look like.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire place, it looked
awesome.
like those French artists that wrapped everything in
Yeah.
the world in like plastic. That's what the whole town looked like, because everything
Yeah.
was just inside like some kind of plastic, like hoop house geodesic structure. It was crazy.
Yeah, and it's not. There's an airfield there. Apparently, for the first
So many
like,
airfields.
so the stuff comes in on trucks, but the trucks, what is it? It's so it's actually there's so much stuff that it is actually cheaper to bring in by airplane. So the semis usually only bring in fluids in bulk, right? Or take fluids. It's for oil up and oil back.
And
Equipment.
equipment.
And equipment stuff, right? But like heating oil and waste and stuff all goes out by airplane, so it's insanely expensive.
And you said there were old planes up there, right?
Yeah. It
In the article, like
yeah.
what era?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that my dad, he was in the military for about 25 years, and
Yeah.
he spent time up in Alaska. And he talks about how you get to a certain place, and them having a bush plane is the way we have a car.
Oh yeah.
Oh, totally.
I
Yeah.
can't even get my head around that. I mean,
Yeah.
because we have recreational flying, we're right by an airport. But,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's just what everybody has. Like,
Yeah.
that's how they have to. They really wouldn't function without that.
There are towns you get up there and you start looking at the map, and like the big cities that everybody's heard of, like Anchorage and Fairbanks, are on a road. But then you look at the map and you open the map, and it's like, okay, the cities are connected by roads, but there are all these other dots that don't have anything going to them. Some of them have unmarked or lightly marked, unpaved roads going to them, but a lot of stuff just doesn't. There's stuff up in the Aleutians and on the coast that the only way anything, literally anything, people, fuel, food, anything comes in now is airplane. Yeah. And you land at the Fairbanks Airport, and there is the runway, and then there is a water runway next to it that is full of stuff on floats, and like all the. So you asked about the cargo stuff. There is what's the name of the airline? It's the C-46.
Oh,
Like famously, they do.
Everett's Air Fuel.
Yeah. So there's one airline that does a lot of cargo bush flying that uses what's a C-46? Globemaster? No. What is
Commando.
it? Commander. They use the C-46, of which there are like 3 left flying in the world, and they have
Something
2
like
of them
that.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing else, and this is like, it's a Curtiss double engine, triple engine, quad, 2 radial. God, I'm bad at words. This massive thing that has not been contemporary since the 40s, that there is nothing else that has that much lift, that much cargo capacity, is that efficient on fuel. And it's just the only answer for getting stuff in and out. So they have the only 2 airplanes
Something like-
that are
yeah.
left doing active cargo work in the
I think
world.
2 out of the 3 like
Yeah.
flying, and then everything else they have is like old like DC-3s, DC-4s.
Because it just
Because
works.
they work.
You don't, and they can repair it without
Yeah.
buying plastic things.
Are you familiar with the Mustard, the YouTube channel?
Yes.
Which one?
Mustard.
No.
Oh,
Great.
I
What
just
is
have
this?
to show you this evening.
Great.
It's so great. It is so great.
Great.
Something to do after.
Excellent channel.
If you're a plane train guy, it's great.
So he's
Mustard
awesome.
just got a plug. So
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Shout out to
He
Mustard.
earned it. So something that amazes me, because he goes through a lot of historical airframes that aren't still around.
Yeah.
And so often we don't follow these things to their end where we can conclude it won't work. It's just that the economics fall out.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing about planes,
Right.
because so even the airbase that we're right next to, the airframes, we have one that's a 61. You can look at the tails, the KC-135 Rs that they're flying. They were retrofitted about 25 years ago that make them Rs, but it's a 70-year-old airframe.
Yeah.
That, and you're talking about the wealthiest military power by
Right.
a long shot.
Right.
It's just a different. They don't mature the way cars do. There's just and because there's so much expense to bringing something new,
Yeah.
that you wind up that you stick with these things for a long time, and
Yeah.
that's just that doesn't surprise me to hear. In one way, that's amazing to hear, but on the other hand, it's not surprising at all, because there's just weird things that persist in aircraft.
Why reinvent the plane? If it's not
There-
broke, don't
about-
fix it.
About 10, I guess it was about 10 or 12 years ago, before I came to R&T, I had a couple of years where I was freelancing, and I did a thing for Popular Mechanics on the U-2, and went, the spy plane, right?
man.
Dates
Yeah.
of the Cold War. Great Scary Powers shut down in one, like this, 70,000 foot airplane that has a film camera where the film in it is, larger than a sheet of paper, and and is this massively, massively efficient thing with a wingspan that's twice the length of the fuselage, but they're still flying them, and it's not like it's a bit like the B-52 or the 135 where there is just no better answer, but also like the B-52 where there have been like 4 or 5 block updates, where they go through the entire airframe. So you look at a modern U-2. It was crazy because like the story that I did, it was actually on, because literally everything in my life revolves around cars. It was on the chase cars that they use for spotting during landings. Because the fun thing about the U-2 is that so there are 2 things at play. One, it has a bicycle gear setup. There is a double axle gear up front in the nose. There's one like in the middle of the fuselage, and that's all it has. And on takeoff, they have these little outriggers, these pogos that go in the end of the wingtips, so the wingtips don't drag. But the moment any load goes off, and they drop away. Right, Brady. So they drop away, and on landing, when you come in, your whole job is to not drop the wingtips, right? But this is also an airplane that has a massively high stall speed for what it is, that has a very narrow control window, and the controls become much less effective at low speed. And to boot, like everybody knows what a U-2 looks like or an SR-71 looks like. Right. You're in the cockpit, you have like 15 degrees of vision out the front of it, or 20 degrees of vision, and that's it. So all that stuff that's behind you, you just don't see. So they have chase cars where basically they put another U-2 pilot who was not in an airplane that day in. For a while it was, for a long time they used Camaros. At one point they were using, I want to say it was big block GM wagons of some sort.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
I think I heard at one point they were running Grand Nationals. For
Oh my God! Really?
That's
that might
not
not be
surprising.
I remember hearing
Because if you
it.
think about it, they need something that's big that won't get tossed around by the weight coming off the jet. They need
Right.
something that's got a lot of torque, because they wait at the end of the runway, and then when the thing comes over the runway, I don't know what the stall speed is on it, but it's highway speed or better.
80, 90.
Okay.
Wow.
And
That's
they need to
wild.
be able to sit there, and the moment it comes over, gun it
Slingshot
and
it.
catch it.
Yep.
And they have to be really close. So they end up about, I don't know, probably, let's say 15, 20 degrees off the axis of the jet in its like hindquarter blind spot as pilots are coming in. And they'll sit there and they'll go, left wingtip up, right? There's language for it, but it's basically you're going down on the left, you're up on the left, nose high, nose low, things like that, and they talk them down to the ground. And so I got to ride in one of these cars while the U-2 landed. Oh man, dude! At some point, after this, I've got pictures on my phone of sitting in a car where there is a U2 like 10 feet in front of me, about 10 feet off the air. And you're sitting in the car, and they're just talking on the radio, and they're all nonchalant about it. And the whole thing smells like it's not Jet A. Is it JP? What do they use?
I mean, it's Jet A. It's JP something because it's the military, but it's just Jet A in a different bottle.
So the whole car reeks of kerosene. Like, you can barely breathe. And you're sitting there, and you are...
like a Mustang.
Hey.
Sorry.
You're basically staring down the tutor of like one of the most impressive machines we've ever made, as like some dude in the cockpit is having a really hard time putting it on the ground, and even the good ones need the chase plane. And it's interesting too. So the air base they do it out of is near Sacramento. It's where the SR-71 was based, because they are high enough and fast enough that they can be based there. A guy was telling me, he was like, "Yeah, we'd go up to Seattle for lunch." And I'm like, "Well, how long did that take?" And he said some number that made me went, "What?"
Wait, did you turn SR-71?
No, in 71. But so like the U2, they will literally, they'll wake up and overfly the West Coast and then come back. But they do all the training there too, and so they'll go up. And the really cool thing about this program is that that airplane has just been pushed and pushed and pushed to be relevant, because you think, okay, well, their whole job is flying over things and taking pictures. Can't we use satellites for it? And I had a guy explain to me that satellite time is very expensive. The U2 is a relatively cheap airplane to fly. B, the resolution they get out of the film camera is still better than what a satellite can pull, which is insane. And C, like booking satellite time, A, you have to book it, and B, you have to make sure that there has to be a satellite in orbit over what you want to see and at the right point in his orbit. And sometimes it's easier to just launch a U2 and then go look down at it, and then get the thing back on the ground and develop film. And like they've now at the point where I want to say there's something like a scanner in the airplane. They could beam stuff down. They converted it to, it's still film, but there is some digital element to it.
Beam it down, Scotty.
Maybe it's like CCD under it, or
I feel like they added a digital imager but kept the film camera, I think.
It makes sense. So we ended up sitting there, and they train all the guys to do it there. And when you are, I promise I will shut up about airplanes in a moment. Sorry.
Hey, it's everything on this show. You're good, man.
When you are, the crazy thing is like, in order to fly a U2, you have to. It's like trying out for the Blue Angels, right? You apply for it. You are selected. If you have a certain amount of experience, then you get to, like, the Blue Angels. They basically just, it's a premium thing. You do a tour, but with U2, it's like the SR-71 was, where they bring people in, and if you meet certain criteria, if you have such and such a record, they'll put you in the airplane, and you have like some set amount of time to go through the school and learn it. And at the end of it, when you've done all the ground school and had like the in-flight trainings, you get so many number of landings that you can nail. And if you can't nail them, you wash out. And the number is something crazy. It's like 3 or something. so you have these guys, and I was like, well, how often did that happen? He's like, often enough that, we've decided it's pretty hard. Like, the fact that guys will spend, like, some of the best pilots in the Air Force will, go up in this airplane, learn to fly it, like, put on, because they wear basically, the suits, pressure suits they wear, basically, it's like, you see pictures,
suits.
You see pictures of guys in SR-71s. It's the orange thing with the slide-down helmet. It is hard 1960s stuff. And they'll put them in all that, and they'll go up and they'll see the curvature of the Earth and fly the airplane and come back. And they come down, and he said it's really, really common for guys people to just wash out because they can't put the airplane on the ground. Mm-hmm. And they've burned up. There were 2 or 3 two-place trainer U2s that were built out of crashed airframes, and then somebody crashed one of them, but they were always crashed. All the crashes come on landing, and there are more crashes in training than there are in active flight because of the way the training works. It's crazy. Wow. Anyway, no more airplanes.
I think at this point, one more thing on airplanes. Just really, I just want to tie a bow on this really quickly, and that's to say that there's currently 3 incredibly old airplanes that the U.S. Air Force absolutely depends on, right? The B-52, the U-2, and the C-130. And I'd just like to point out that 2 of those 3 planes were designed by one Kelly Johnson. Shout out to a real one.
Lucky. Anyway.
So we've been thinking about questions, and I have one that I will just hate it if I don't get to ask it while I've got the opportunity. It's not the one you think.
Oh, well, that's good.
The one I thought was not good.
I hope
so,
we get to that one.
Don't need to drink more for
it's
that
so
one.
dumb. Okay.
I like dumb questions.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
One of my
Threaten
favorite,
me with a good time.
Twist my arm, why don't you?
one of my favorite, like growing up, I was a weird kid. I read Reader's Digest as a kid, but one of my favorite things was
For the digest part, mostly.
Right.
I like the jokes, where it's like
jokes
some
are
tame
good.
senior citizen goes,
You're right.
Anyway.
It's almost funny because it's not funny.
right.
So one of my favorite sections in it is what your blank won't tell you. You
Yeah.
know, I want to know. There's the adage, don't meet your heroes. And one thing I love about getting around industries and what you learn on the inside that just people outside don't know, from being around it.
Yeah.
There's so little room in my perspective. Like he said, so much of it's in California, and some of it's just unattainable. I feel like Freiberger and Finnegan have done done a good job with that brand of getting to get access to them. But
Yeah.
Right.
there's just so much stuff that's at these closed tracks. There's not a lot of reach to it, at least from my perspective. What's the hero you wish you hadn't met? Like what's the dirty secret
man.
of the industry that
God.
where the blinders fell off and you kind of cut your teeth learning what it's really like.
How to say that without insulting dead people, defaming dead people, or
They won't mind.
be
Hey, there's like 3 active listeners. You're looking at them.
yeah,
So,
really,
you're
we're
pretty good.
hello, mom. I take that back. She's dead. She can't listen.
Samuel!
Sorry. She would find that funny.
She absolutely would. It's true. It's true and fair.
But I don't know. It's let's do the diplomatic version of that. There are some people who I thought were going to be very kind and thoughtful who ended up being arrogant pricks. There are a lot of people in the business who. So I am something of an exception, and this doesn't make me special. It's just like weird. Forgive me, my phone just went off. I'm something of an exception in that, like, I am a journalist who has done some club racing and have a little bit of experience and can slide cars and do stunt driving and things like that. And it's
I just want to just interrupt for just a hot second.
Yeah.
This man's an artist behind the wheel. He's being very modest right now. Go ahead.
His associate
hate
editor's
you,
at
and
Haggerty.
now I'm really uncomfortable. No, but like I'm relatively capable and can do that stuff. And coming in, I thought that was just like bar for entry, right? That was what everybody had to do. And
Yeah.
it turns out that there's a stereotype that car journalists can't drive and crash a lot, and it turns out that most of them can't drive and crash a lot.
Ouch.
And I am not,
Man.
I'm no Senna or Schumacher or Dale or and pick your name, right? But I can drive a race car and not end up in a wall 99% of the. Shut up! He's making thumbs. Chaffee's making gestures, but that was shocking. It's also remarkable how many guys and women don't really. I came up reading an awful lot, and history really matters to me, and I care about it so much because it is relevant, right? The whole idea that A, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been, but B, you don't know how stuff fits in context.
So
And
true.
what anything matters, what weight it carries, unless you know where it was. Part of the reason that you can, like, you drive modern McLarens, for example, and some of them have things that actually are in common in how they feel and how they're built and how they're thought about by the people who built them, with like a McLaren F1, 30-year-old car that was made by the same company when it was completely different. Or you look at how, like the Mustang's a perfect example. If you have like an S550 and an S197 are very different cars.
Oh yeah, independent
But-
rear suspension
yeah.
just right off the bat.
Right,
Yeah.
but there are things that they have in common that they feel similar.
Yeah, and they haven't
And-
changed the DNA.
Yeah.
Like so many car manufacturers reinvent their
Right.
image, and it kills it for enthusiasts.
Right.
Just speaking from someone who grew up, like I grew up on Mustangs and all other
Yeah.
stuff. Like we love Corvettes, we love McLarens, but
Yeah.
if you get it wrong, the people that really care notice.
Right.
And if you don't know your history as a manufacturer, it matters.
Yeah.
It very much does. Even with nomenclature.
Yeah, you would
Can we
name
be
an
real?
electric car a Mustang.
And
Mach-
so can we-
just
can we-
call it the Mach-E?
Right,
Just
so
don't put Mustang in it.
We're all
You
sort of
know,
on
it
the same
just be a
page.
good
It's a
car.
phenomenal electric vehicle,
Yeah, but-
but
But that's the thing, right? Like if you
Yeah.
know, and they're like the Mustang discussion is interesting. Like I had several years ago, I had a 65 fastback. It was just nothing special. It was a
Fastback.
was.
Sam's done it all.
It was special because it was a fastback.
Hey,
But
this man knows his numbers.
66. They hit $1 million by 66.
You're
They
right,
started
you're
at
right.
64 and a half. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Corvette took 40 years to hit $1 million.
there's a man with a
premium New Balances
Slicing and
that come
dicing.
with that.
He's sitting next to the Corvette guy who has a Z06 outside in the
No, hey,
garage.
I like Honda CRVs. Okay,
I know,
not
I know.
I had a CRV.
CRV.
Yeah.
300,000 miles, drives fantastic.
I just
It
got one with
starts
the CD.
every time I get in it. I love it.
We had a manual 05 that my wife drove that we bought at 120 and took to 170, I guess, and it ate an alternator, it ate rotors, and it ate
That was such a good car.
a bunch of vomit from my kids, but it didn't eat anything else. It was
Isn't that
amazing.
what CRVs do best, though? Eat vomit from kids. We're about to have a kid, and we have a CRV.
Congrats.
It's not a
No,
car.
we're about to have it.
Okay, good point.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, it was. God, it was great because in the winter you couldn't smell it, and you knew when it was summer. You knew when it was no amount of cleaning, man. Every hot day you'd just be like, "Yep, it's come back."
Spilled milk does that too.
Oh,
It
Oh,
runs, and it's over. My mom had a Maxima.
Stop.
It never,
Stop. That's episode 1.
Yeah.
Don't go back to spoil.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
You're
yeah.
done. You're cut
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
We're cutting
that's
you off.
But just to close the circle on the Mustang thing, like there are things that a 65 has in common with a Fox body, has in common with an SN95, has in common with a 197 or a 550, right? They're all very different cars, but you can see the line. And when what's really interesting is when car makers start making the choice to take stuff away. So like Corvettes, right? So the C8 is a deeply approachable, I haven't driven the Z06 yet, but the base C8 is a deeply approachable, soft, kind of, it's the only mid-engine car I've driven that feels like it steers and moves from the front of the car. It leans on the front tires hard.
That's so on brand.
It is, but that's the thing. You talk to them and you're like, I don't know, man, how, because we had, first time I drove one was Road and Track's performance car that you're testing at Thunder Hill in, I don't remember when that would have been. But we had some of the engineers out, and we had a couple pro drivers with us, and the whole staff drove it, and we all got out of it. We were like, what's going on? Because like the car is not real sharp on entry into the corner. Like it does things in the corner that mid-engine cars usually do sharper. It's a little softer.
I've heard that a lot. Throttle House, a lot of people have done that.
So the interesting thing is, you get out of it and you're like, I don't know, man. It's a little pushy. It's not super sensitive to steering and throttle inputs. Like the car just kind of falls on the nose in the middle of the corner and then sets there. It's real stable, but it's not. It doesn't poke you. Like mid-engine cars, when you get them up on the limit, they typically are interesting and dicey and needle thready, and they do exactly what you want. The moment the cliche with a race car is, race cars do exactly what you want when you want, even if that's the wrong thing. Right. Road cars will sometimes not let you do the wrong thing, right? But that. We talked to engineers about it. And we're like, why'd you make those choices? Because the thing about cars is that, especially in engineering, especially in like handling, everything's a choice. Right. Like it all comes down to, what cost what, which component they wanted to spend for, and then some human at the end of it signed off on the handling balance. And they were like, well, here's the thing. We have an awful lot of people who are used to we have a lot of customers who are used to how front engine cars drive.
Yep.
And we wanted to make this forgiving and approachable, because you hop into a Ferrari, you hop into a McLaren, and they are kind of dicey things, especially when you drive them hard, and we wanted to make this friendly. And I said, so is that how all of them are going to be? And he's like, can't talk about future product, shrug, shrug, shrug. And it turns out, like, from talking to the people I know who've tested the Z06, the Z06 is not like that, because it is a different market.
And the Zora will be the same, I assume?
Probably, yeah. And that's like that is them making choices to, the people who want the car that behaves a certain way, they're going to buy a Z06 or the top shelf thing.
Yeah.
And it's, in a lot of ways, you have to respect it, and people have liked it, and the thing sells. So, on the one hand, you can poke at it and be like, "You're raising your hand, hush." I'm monologuing.
Okay, as long as
He's monologuing. Give him a minute.
Don't change topics. I have a Corvette question.
Everything I have to say is amazing. I'm going to continue for 4 hours. No, but yeah, it's crazy, because like those are all things that they think about, and like there's a certain insurance company that will not insure McLarens anymore because they just get crashed too much. And the thing about a McLaren is that like they have really good stability control systems. They're also real dicey, and you drive one real hard, you can put the car into a corner in a way the stability control will not save you. Like, I mean, stability control can do anything that brakes can and throttle chop can, right?
Independent braking and all.
Which means that if you fire a car into a 45 mile an hour corner at 80, it's not going to save you. And so, like, there are ups and downs to the way any of that stuff is dialed. And it's just interesting, that's all choices. And again, that doesn't make the C8 bad or good. It's just those were the choices they made. Right?
And they stuck to their market.
Yeah, they knew who they were talking to. And like, typically, GM has had the Corvette, the big dirty secret about the Corvette is that, every 5 minutes somebody inside tries to cancel it. And,
You mean like the Camaro?
Big oof.
Yes.
I hate that because I love the Z28 and the Z01
but that's
and stuff.
part of that is GM, but part of that is just like low volume, high cost, low margin cars are real hard to justify. It's why the Viper died.
Unless you're Bentley, right? Because they just had an app. I was reading in. Boring. I'm a banker. I read, Market Watch and stuff like that.
Oh, you actually get paid. What's that like? How does that work?
More money, more problems.
He says that you get lined up and slapped with a banana peel at the end of the week?
That's
Is there money in it? I do it. That sounds great. I bet you have health insurance. That's amazing.
They have, and this kind of ties to that. So Bentley had just they had a fantastic year last year.
Yeah.
They doubled it this in 2022,
Yeah.
and they're doing the bespoke thing to the nth degree.
Right.
They could reach a point where there's no two alike on the road because there's so much customization, and there's the economy of scale to support that because we have the largest wealth disparity like in the history of recording these things. But that aside, what's funny is I think about that sometimes with the U.S. We have this tendency. You can think of any interest, and we have the means, generally speaking, as as participants in an economy, to far outpace our ability with what we can acquire.
Yeah.
Here's a silly example: golf clubs. Like everybody wants pro golf clubs that
Not everybody.
But the problem is the forgiveness thing. That's common across a lot of different disciplines. Like so, how much can an amateur get away with this? Because the race car thing is true of so many things. What makes a great golf club for your golfer of choice is that it does what he wants it to do or she wants it to do.
Right.
But if you don't know what you're doing, that's the problem. So that's just so funny that they recognize it's like
they do and they don't, right? And Bentley's an odd case because their margins are a lot fatter than you think, but the company is a lot less like they are. Their financials are a lot more sketchy in ways that you wouldn't expect. Mm-hmm. But the product thing is interesting, right? Because there are. Take 129, right? Those two Mustangs out there in the hands of somebody who really knows what they're doing could run down anything on 129. And Mustangs are not supercars, but I guarantee you that a hot McLaren in the hands of somebody who's a 10 out of 10 driver and a hot Mustang on most back roads in a 10 out of 10 driver, those two cars are going to hang, right? And a lot of it comes down to, the fact that most road cars are just too much for modern roads. And manufacturers are, for years they chase numbers to sell the stuff.
We've talked about this.
We have, and honestly, that doubles back to your Corvette comment. Like, if we're being real, most of the people that you sell cars to do not care about cornering G's or how much traction you get laterally. They just care about 0 to 60. And you put something behind you, the engine, and you really set that weight back. Like, they're killing everything at red lights with minimal input.
And the funny thing is too, like they care about 0 to 60, but they care about it less than they ever have.
Right.
So I used to work with a guy named Jason Camisa who has a pretty heavy YouTube presence at the moment, and is very, very good at what he does. But at one point, we were both just staffers on the same magazine, and Jason has a big head for numbers and a big head for spreadsheets. And he started pulling things out at one point and realized that no amount of tire technology will get us further than physics and weight transfer will allow, right? We are all but at the bottom limit of acceleration, meaning that a front-wheel drive car is limited by weight, where it carries it, and how it puts its power down. I mean, we have a 3-year-old GTI that cannot keep the tires glued in first, right? like with stability control on it, can't keep it glued. There are the bottom limit for 60-mile-an-hour times is basically, it was reached a couple of years ago, and to the point where most of the hypercars will do it in just under, somewhere between high 1s and high 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And at that, that's, I forget what a Tesla Plaid is, but
1.99.
That's in the same range.
Yeah.
And it's not, at that point, it's neat, but it's not fun. You do it a couple times, you get kind of sick,
I've
and
heard
then
people
it
say
wears off.
their neck hurts and it's all kinds of things.
And it stops being useful, right?
Right, because you're just draining it. It has to set up. You do the cheetah mode. It starts to position itself and get its weight set up. It's not just you go. It's still fast if you just go, but
We've talked about how lifeless, and I mean this broadly, how quickly you get to monotony with electric platforms.
Yeah.
Right. So like GM's doing the thing where essentially they're going to have like one literal rolling platform, and they're just going to,
hey, but the Hummer can crab walk.
Right,
you
right,
watch
right,
it now.
they're just going to drop different shapes on it, and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be this with different shapes on top.
Yeah.
But one thing that I hope that does, because I don't think, I don't know, but we go back and forth. We deliberate all the time about how much more time ICB engines have. But for hopefully they just get comfortable with themselves, and we're past the horsepower wars, and we're just driving. Because I've never heard any article I've read, anything I've ever watched, I've never heard anyone call the Sesto Elemento their favorite car they've ever driven, or just pick it. I'm picking on that one, but it's always some 50-year-old Mercedes or some 50-year-old Porsche that gets to 60 maybe next week. But that's not why they've driven all these cars like y'all have. You drive all these cars.
Cars are not rational buying experiences for anyone either.
Right,
people that try to go to numbers, that just never works. You look like you need to say something, Michael.
I have a lot to say about this.
Okay,
not the bus.
Good. Here it is.
Strap in. Where's my beer?
No, but seriously, I was kind of cracking wise earlier about like how I used to be into cars, but it's literally this, right? Like as soon as an Accord you buy at the dealer can get around a corner faster than it is safe or responsible or useful to go around a corner in the real world.
Accelerate our Mustangs.
What does it matter how much better a Porsche can handle than that Accord? And that was kind of my whole challenge, right? And like as an engineer, I was gonna say as an engineer sooner or later. As an engineer,
There it is.
okay. Ching, I got a couple more.
Time to go, and I'm gonna be over there.
Oh wait till I get
If
to
he
the-
starts talking about computer science,
If I start talking
I
about
have
as a
to use the
corporate
restroom.
technology
check
consultant,
out.
run. We have anyway. Like that was, I think, the beginning of the end for me. Is when I realized that, the last 20, 30, 40 years, right? Every part of engineering, especially things like computation and metallurgy and things like that, have gotten so good, and also like just communication and knowledge sharing has gotten better. Anybody can go make a great car, right? Like you almost can't buy a car. You would have to
unless
As a CVT.
FCA
sorry.
made it.
Oh,
snap. Wow.
Hey,
Oh,
I'd take a Dodge Viper
hell.
any day. I'd push it if I have
Viper
to.
was
Both
the
barrels,
last gen-
Brady
the last
coming in
gen was made
blazing.
on FCA.
Brady doesn't pull punches.
Yeah. Sorry. Good.
No, you're good.
That
I'm
Jeep
just,
life
I'm
ruined
just
him.
kind of thinking ahead. I'm like, I've not yet driven a Hellcat. I would like to.
They won't warrant. I've heard they won't warranty them.
No, they will.
I thought
They will,
I thought they wouldn't warranty the
You
engine.
said that the other day, and I had to look it up because I was like, I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah,
thought
they'll still warrant them. I don't know.
I
why
mean,
would
you
build
said
something
FCA.
wouldn't
What you
warrant
probably really meant to say
Stellantis.
was
Is it not FCA anymore?
No, I was going to say Nissan or half of Ford or some of GM or all of BMW.
All
or,
of it.
we got lists, man. We got long lists.
Okay, so we did the last episode we did that's out is a premise where somebody
The challenge.
Yeah, the $200,000 challenge.
Oh
where
my gosh!
you
we'll
get
never have that.
$200,000 between $200,000 and $300,000 to buy a car. And it'll pay if you need to import it, import fees, taxes, whatever. The car comes to you. You have up to $300,000, but then for 5 years it's your daily, and you have to cover all maintenance, repairs, etc.
I can spend at least two.
Listen, as soon as I said this, the words just got out of my mouth, and Zach goes, "So nothing German."
You said this, and I can hear the voice in Michael's head where it's like, I'm going to buy a house and a bicycle, and all y'all can go to
No, I mean, you explicitly
Not a
specified
house in this
car.
market, though, unfortunately.
Okay, super fair. But look at the look on my face was just ideating. I'm like, what's my $200,000 car?
So we'll go through ours real quick.
Yeah.
Mine was just dumb.
I got
but
crucified for mine. Do
Yeah,
I bring it back
you
up?
deserved
The idea was
You
you,
deserve
Yeah, it's
you had to
fine.
use it every day. You had to use it at your job. You had to spend at least $200,000. That's what got me because I'm so
have
cheap.
to spend
I was
at
looking at
least
rebuilt
two.
title cars and
At
stuff.
least
and
two?
Brady just
You have to spend between two.
Can you
and
buy
$300,000.
$200,000 cars?
No.
One car
My
for
God.
$200K.
So-
the whole point
That's
is
a difficult question.
yeah, someone
Yeah.
gave you the money. You have to spend at least 200, but less than 3. And I found because I'm just a Mustang now, I found a '68 GT 500, but it was a KR, and that's what
Yeah.
brought the value up. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can work on it. It's a 428 Cobra Jet. That's pretty easy. You can find parts for it. I've wrenched on stuff like that all my life.
Yeah.
It's great. It was a 4-speed car.
His was the best answer.
I went
Oh,
for
we
absolute
grilled
fun.
him.
His
I went
is
for
the
absolute
fun.
insanity and just went for the RS200.
You found one. I'm bringing
I
a trailer
found
too.
one,
We had to
too.
find
You had
exact.
to
I
find
found
it.
a listing.
Daily.
I found,
But imagine Zach.
It would be a challenging day, but it'd be a fun daily.
Oh, yeah.
Until the first week was over and you were in misery for the next 5 years.
And
That's
Zach-
the whole problem. Is like, what is your usage profile?
Right, yeah.
Because like daily driver means something very different to somebody
Oh,
who's
yeah.
That's true.
stop and go for an hour every day versus
He gets on the highway
It's
and goes
interstate
for,
driving,
yeah.
so it wouldn't be stop and go necessarily.
We
but it
joked
would
he'd
be-
drive medians to make
I
it more
probably would.
pleasant.
Just cross back and forth a few times. Get your use out of it.
All right, so we have to answer this
I already
question,
have
or can we
Wait,
just sit here and
you
make
didn't
fun
say
of,
your
make
car.
fun
I
of
have
bad
to answer
cars?
this question because I've come up with my answer.
Oh, God.
Mine was, and I was so proud of mine.
The guy that figured it out beforehand. Restaurants are on the spot.
When you ask the question, you have little months to think about it.
This was my idea.
I made the test and I got 100 on it. I mean, I know all the answers. but I'm
Literally.
very
He
good.
says it on the podcast.
do.
I'm not the first to think. Right? Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But, and this is part of the point of the thought experiment. What I came up with was a Toyota Century.
Oh, good call.
right?
Good call.
Solid.
Wait, how are you
Yes.
going to buy a Century for 200 grand though? I
Oh,
thought
they're
it had to
cheaper
be.
than that?
Yeah, they're way cheaper.
Not brand new. Not brand
Oh,
new.
you're buying a new Century.
Well, that's the thing.
Salute.
You had-
Holy.
Hold on, can you spend some of the money on moving to Japan? Because I'd like to get on that.
So I found one. I think it was actually DuPont. I found one that was about, I think 210. That might have been 1 or 2 years old.
Yeah.
And
Oh man.
it would have. I figured 90,000. Surely I can get it here for 90,000. I mean, maybe I was wrong, but I was like, if I have 90,000 to get it here, like maybe.
I mean, if it's only a couple years old, you can't import it. That's the problem, right? I mean,
Oh, I didn't know. See,
So it has to- it has to be old, yeah.
Well, we don't even know what the maintenance costs were because you were trying to get us to think about maintenance too, and it had a V12.
right.
But
and
it's a Toyota.
But it's a V12. You have a 12 start.
Tell that to literally everybody who owns a high mileage Tacoma. I mean,
yeah,
My
but, I mean,
Tacoma's got an 8-liter V12 out of a
Listen.
Dodge Viper.
Listen, the only way it can be better
Yeah.
is a Honda. Okay.
that's a good question. though.
And here's and I'd love to hear those answers, but the point was, and this is exactly what you're getting at. We're like post car. We've got to this awful place where, and not that it's true everywhere, and there's still some cool stuff out there. And like I said, hopefully we're getting away from the horsepower war. Because
I think the driver's cars are coming back. Not to interject, but like look at Nissan and their new Z car. Like
Yeah,
they're not going
looks
for
good.
killer power. They're going for style and something that speaks to you and feels good.
but that's what the utility of whatever a car can be. If it can't be driven, maybe for some, but I just don't like that. Like
Yeah.
for whatever it is, if it doesn't have utility, I wouldn't hold McLaren to the same standard I would at an Accord. That's not fair as far as that goes, because
Right.
they're not built. It's not that they couldn't engineer that; they're engineering it to do a different thing.
Yeah.
But the fact that, like, when you think about 200,000 and you think about like what's available and stuff, it's just the fact that you would absolutely lament the thought of being responsible for repairs and maintenance. I don't know. It was kind of meant as commentary on the state of things that we're abandoning what a car was ever supposed to be in some instances, and just
It's like Jeremy Clarkson still loving the 2005 and 6 Ford GTs.
even though they gave him every reason to hate it.
Totally impractical. He had to pay for gas all the time because it was a gas hog, but he loved those cars since he was a kid when they were GT40s, and when they came out with the final iteration, in my opinion, it just blew him away.
Yeah.
Sorry, twin turbo V6s are great and all, but So what are y'all's
what's
cars?
y'all's
That's what we want to know,
so-
actually.
I'm ready.
Oh,
He's
okay.
already ready.
Well, that was part 1 of our post-car podcast with Michael and Sam, 2 of our favorite guests. It's also worth noting they're our only guests at this point, but we've loved having them, and we've got 2 more parts coming up of this, so stay tuned, and if we can get it cranked over, we'll have more for you to listen to. Hey, Jim, hit her with the sparkulator fluid.